Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 40th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. As I added down below, it says we are 12 subscriptions away from 3,000. So we really appreciate you guys for doing that. So please do that on the race to 3,000. Hopefully we get there and then we'll jump into that next milestone. So please do that. Also, guys, can you go over and join the Old Miss channel? It really helps out our road there. Again, once you get up to 1,000 subs, if you don't want to be a part anymore, do that. Then unsubscribe. That's fine. But for now, please join us. In the comments, I dropped that link, so please go over and join Leanne and then also Mark over there. They deliver great content, a lot of recruiting content as well. She actually dropped a video on here about Texas, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Also, please, again, use the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process or experience. I really appreciate that. And then also, Mark's going live right now. So once you're done with us, go ahead and check him out. I still think he's going live from the Michigan versus Ohio State show. That was scheduled today. So go over there and check that out. Thank you for that, guys. And let's jump into this. I've seen a lot of people mention, a lot of lists being brought out about this. Where does Steve Sarkisian rank among SEC head coaches? Gerald, we both created our list. Let's start at the bottom, and then we get to Sark. We can dive into that. And if we cross over here at 16, that's fine. One of us will hit on it, and then we'll move on to 15, so on and so forth if we do cross over. So number 16, Gerald, who is your 16th best coach in the SEC?
It's hard for me, but as it stands right now, I think I got to go Jeff Lebby, just based on what we saw in the field. And my personal feelings on Jeff Lebby aside, I just think the job he did last year, it didn't seem like he was maximizing the talent they had. And again, I just don't, it was a weird move by them. And I think it's probably trying to get back to some of what Leach was doing. And so it was kind of like who's available that's kind of Leach-ish. But I honestly and ultimately don't think it's going to work out. Now, I could be wrong. And you know what? That'd be great for Mississippi State fans. Again, my personal feelings aside, I love it when all the teams on the schedule are good. So, but right now I've got Jeff Lebby at 16.
Yeah, so we agree here. I agree with you literally on everything you said, so there's not much more to say other than even when this hire was done, I said this was a bad hire. I didn't think he was a great coordinator, and to me, if you're hiring a coordinator that's never had a head coaching experience, they have to be great. I don't think he is, so he's my 16th head coach as well. Let's go to 15. 15 for me is Mark Stoops. Gigantic fall for grace from him, in my opinion. This is guy, by the way, stealing from Kentucky, getting paid like $10 million a year. And I agree, in the past, he has won 8 games at Kentucky. That is hard to do, especially multiple years in a row. This team, and he's made them relevant, honestly, in the SEC. But the last couple of years, they have really struggled. And I'm going to say this year, I think they're going to be just as bad as they were last year. They really haven't figured out the quarterback situation. The recruiting has kind of gone downhill. And the transfer portal haul was really bad. They lost way more talent than they brought in. So he's my 15th.
Yeah, and I think it's not a good look when you're on a downward turn and you're very openly flirting with other jobs. Like, it's just on top of the on-the-field struggles, like trying to get out of Dodge when things are going poorly. It's just an all-around bad look. And again, Mark Stoops may be a victim of his own success, right? I feel like he has elevated the level of expectation at Kentucky to now a point where it's probably unsustainable at what he's able to do. So it's a very weird situation to be in where he has gotten them to that point, but now he cannot get past that point. And so he's kind of a victim of his own success.
100%. Who's your 15th? Is it the same?
I've got, my 15 was the same. Mark Stoops. Yeah, I'm with
you. Number 14. Who's your 14th then?
14, I've got Mike Elko. And this is probably a little rivalry motivated and maybe too soon to call, but I just did not see, especially offensively, it felt like the entire offensive scheme was mismanaged. And yeah, there's things with the offensive line, there's things with quarterback situation, but it just felt like the CEO aspect of running an offense was just not there. And he's a defensive coach, and they brought in a guy who has Aggie DNA and all of that. But as someone from the outside looking in, they paid a lot of money to get rid of Jimbo Fisher. And in year one, we got basically Jimbo Fisher results. A lot of close losses, a very similar record to what we have with Jimbo. On some of their biggest games, they just didn't show up. To me, especially like I take context into account with this. When you pay that much to get rid of a guy and you bring in your guy, like you need to see almost an immediate jump. Year zero does not exist anymore, especially with what A&M has to do now. There's probably something to be said about money that would be paid for NIL deals or for portal guys being tied up and getting rid of Jimbo. But as it stands right now, based on what we've seen on the field, I've got Elko pretty low on the list.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Anywhere from like, I think the top 6 are locked in. I would be surprised if we don't have the top 6 in like similar order, but anywhere from 7 to 14 is going to be interchangeable to me. I think you could rise someone all the way up there. I think you drop them all the way to 14. 15, 16, I feel the same way. I think those are the 2 worst coaches in the SEC. I don't think that's really up for debate, in my opinion. Number 14, I have Sam Pittman.
Yeah, I'd Sam Pittman at I'd say Pittman at 13. So we're pretty close there, and we'll vamp until Matthew makes it back. But Sam Pittman is a guy who it's hard for me to put Sam Pittman in this position on the list, specifically because Sam Pittman is such a stinking likable guy, right? Sam Pittman is a guy you want to cheer for, you want to have in your corner, you want to be in his corner. I love that style of football, that old school run it down your throat, beat you down kind of style of football. And this is me as a Texas fan. We're rivals, right? It's hard for me to praise rivals, but I have Sam Pittman right above where Matthew had him at 14. I have him at 13. Next, I've got Hugh Freeze. And I think for me, this is simply motivated because, again, you've got an opportunity to come in and you hire a guy because he can beat Alabama. And it's year one, right? We have to wait for results, but all of these year one coaches just did not impress me that much. So I was not a fan of what Hugh Freeze put on the field. And again, I think for what we expected from him coming in, what they're able to do and what he's been able to do in the portal and with recruiting. I mean, again, he is we'll call it an early adopter or maybe a beta tester of NIL. So we know what he's able to do, what he's capable of doing, but we have not seen it from him yet. So moving up the list for me, next we're talking about Sam Pittman and Hugh Freeze. I've got Brent Venables up next on my list again, and this is because I just feel like OU can and should and has the resources to be better than what they put on the field last year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And now, again, Brent Venables is a defensive coach, and that defense was a monster last year. That defense is the reason why they won most of the games they won. But when we see the amount of talent they have, when we see they didn't have a single healthy wide receiver all year, so it's really hard to judge the offense. But again, like you can't really prepare for having 6, 7, 8, 9 guys hurt in that wide receiver room. But when the opportunity presented itself, like it felt like OU just couldn't get over the hump. Now, I'm a believer that OU has too many resources, has too much going for them, has too much history. And again, this is me as a Texas fan, right? As a Texas supporter, Texas grad, right? OU has been good basically my entire adult life, right? For my entire life, there have been more ups than downs. And so seeing OU in this position, it's hard to say that it's anything but the leadership. Now, part of that can be said for the coach that left them in the lurch. Part of it can be said for the positioning that they're in currently going into the SEC. But again, in year one in the SEC, it was not an impressive outing from Brent Venables. I did not see what I want. I did not see what I hoped to see from them. They need to get better on the offensive side of the ball. It looks like he's going to be dialing in on the defensive side of the ball based upon all of the changes that did or did not happen. So I'm really going to need to see. And the thing for me that really threw up the red flag for what's going on at OU is it feels like there's a lot of people trying to avoid or flee a sinking ship. And that it sucks to say it out loud. Like I'm not trying to be harsh or try to be rude, but like at some point, like it looks like and feels like guys are fleeing a sinking ship, right? They're even there are talks of coaches leaving, there are talks of coaches not coming in there. They're again top tier players going in the transfer portal. So for me, that is a red flag. That is part of the job of being a head coach at this level. And so I really wanted to see more because again, even as a rival, right? For me, it is better when OU is good. It is better when A&M is good. And so maybe I judge them really harshly, too harshly, because again, the resources they have, the history they have, what they're able to do, what they should be putting on the football field. And especially, again, as a Texas fan, the position that we're currently in, I just hope to see more from then. So moving up the list, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We're in the top 10 right now. I've got Eli Drinkwitz. And this is another one where I feel like Eli Drinkwitz has a lot of opportunity to be really exceptional, right? Eli Drinkwitz is a guy who I think is a great recruiter, is a guy who has an opportunity to build. He's got a lot of talent coming in, more talent than Missouri's been able to have in the past. But again, we saw a fall off. We didn't see that level of production from them that we should have. The level of talent did not match what we got from them. Matthew's back, which is great. Matthew, I just kind of kept going through my list. So I talked about Elko, and we were on 14, I think, when you left us.
You're good.
So Matthew, I think we're on. I want to hear your 14.
Okay, if you can hear me, because Wi-Fi is having issues. Number 14 for me is Sam Pittman. I don't know. I think he's plateaued. I think everything he's accomplished there is great, and I think he's done a good job for what Arkansas expects, honestly, but I don't see it getting any better. I just think the time is up for him, honestly. And you kind of saw he had his best years when he had his best coordinators, and this was kind of that year as well with Bobby Petrino. So I don't think he's that great of a head coach. I think it just depends on the coordinators and who they are. So I think they have to get rid of him. That's my opinion on number 14. Have you made it up any further, Gerald?
Yeah, so I got through a couple more, so let's hear your 13 and 12 as well.
Okay, number 13 for me, I literally have this crossed off like 4 times. I have Brent Venables here. I just think Brent Venables at the program he's at Oklahoma, the expectations are sky high, as they should be, because if you look at the history of Oklahoma has very few down years. They definitely don't have down decades. They just have a couple down years in between every decade, once every, 40, 50 years. And Brent Venables has inherited a decent roster, and they haven't gotten any better. I would say they've stayed about the same of what I expected, honestly, because they did have important pieces leave when Lincoln Riley left. That has to be said as the Texas fan. But, you go 6-7, 10-2, 6-7. I don't know. I just don't think he's that good. I think he was honestly carried the 1 year by Dylan Gabriel. Now, it's kind of funny because he's either had a really good quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, or he's had like crap quarterbacks. So it's going to be very interesting. If like John Mateer can just be good, what are they? If John Mateer's great, then I think you're probably going to get a 9 or 10 win team. If he's bad, you may get 6-7. So I don't know what to say about Brent Venables. Have you done you said 12 as well. So yeah. Number 12 for me is Hugh Freeze. Another guy I just don't know where to put. Very confusing for me, like really good at Liberty, really good at Ole Miss. But let's be honest here. He was playing unfair football at Ole Miss because he was really the only one paying people crazy amounts of money. Do I think other people were paying people? Yeah. Do I think they were getting what they were getting at Ole Miss? No, that's why they went to Ole Miss. Let's be honest about it. And now everyone can play. And so far he's been bad. And then the decision making, like I didn't think Peyton Thorne was good. But you know what I said? I said, you know what? Hugh Freeze, I think, knows his quarterback. So I'll trust him. And Peyton Thorne wasn't good again. So you went all in on Peyton Thorne after having a bad year from Peyton Thorne. I don't understand that. Then you got in the portal and you get a guy in Jackson Arnold who's underachieved tremendously. So I don't understand that. So I have to put him at 12. I just don't understand his thinking on the quarterback. And I don't really honestly, his offense has been subpar as well, even with bad quarterback play. But that's on him. The first year I can put on Peyton Thorne. The second year is on you. You saw who Peyton Thorne was and you still decided to go with Peyton Thorne.
Yeah, you and I had all of those in different order, but same grouping, right? So I think I had Freeze, Pittman, and Venables in that order as well. So like, yeah, I'm with you on all of those. Especially Hugh Freeze, I called him a beta user of NIL is what I called him, to put it delicately. But yeah, I'm with you there. Again, you bring him in because he's a recruiter and because he could beat Alabama, and I don't see the fruit bearing itself out right there. I started on my number 11, which was Venables. So yeah, I talked about Brent Venables. Again, I feel like OU has the resources, has what they need to be better. They should have been better. They can be better. OU's not a he is the first OU head coach in like 20 or 30 years to have multiple losing seasons. Like that is the level that OU has been at, and Brent Venables just has not been there. And that's my period, like end of sentence for Brent Venables.
No, I don't disagree with that. My number 11 is Billy Napier. I think you could argue him a bit higher. I think you could argue him a bit lower. I actually had him basically at this spot last year. To me, this is similar to where I felt Brian Kelly was in his tenure at LSU compared to Billy Napier at Florida, because I had Brian Kelly at, I believe, 2 on my SEC coaches list last year because of what he had done at Notre Dame. I thought he's been solid at LSU, but I said if there's anyone that can fall a lot, it's Brian Kelly. And if there's anyone that can raise up to that number 1 spot, it's Brian Kelly. I don't think obviously Billy Napier can get to number 1, but I think if with a good year here, I could put him as like the 5th best coach in the SEC. I could easily do that. I think he's been okay at Florida. Obviously has not been up to Florida standards of the greatness and excellence they expect, but let's be honest here, pre-Urban Meyer, pre-Steve Spurrier, Florida wasn't that great of a program. So I think he's been, like I said, okay. I think DJ Lagway, to me, if underachieving would be anything less than 9 wins this year, I think this team should go 9-3. So I have him at 11. Again, you could argue him as low as, I think, 14. I think you could argue him somewhere up to probably number 9 or 8. I think that's the highest you could argue him up right now, but he is my 11th best coach as of this moment.
Yeah, I've got Drinkwitz there, and I was talking about him as you came in. I think, again, with what the talent that he brought in, they had a ton of talent at Missouri, and they just did not produce, right? And that, again, ultimately falls on the head coach. You get all the momentum of the recruiting, you get on camera, and you get the big recruiting wins, and then it falls flat. I actually have Napier 1 spot higher at number 10. So, and I'm with you there. Like, DJ Lagway is the truth. He is the future of that program. And I think Billy Napier's ranking and rating as an SEC coach goes as high as DJ Lagway goes. And again, it is a quarterback league. Next year is going to be so quarterback heavy in the SEC. It is insanity. So I think Billy Napier is a guy who I want to be successful. And I think part of Billy Napier's issue at Florida is, one, the standards of Florida are very, very high. And as Texas fans, we understand that. But I think he wanted to do a strip to the studs and build back up. But he also came in with such an inflated staff. Like, he has 40,000 coaches, it feels like. So people you see you spending money, they want results for it.
Yeah, 100%. And they kind of went all in this year, I feel like, because they got a decent transfer portal haul. They also got a pretty good recruiting class. And I think DJ Lagway is special. So to me, like I said, 9 wins for Billy Napier. Number 10 for me is Clark Lee. I think 1 year just can't erase what he's done at Vanderbilt. Like, he's won basically 2-3 games every year other than last year. And I think that has a lot more to do with Jerry Kill and Diego Pavia, and obviously gets both of them back this year. After they leave, we'll see who he truly is, if he's learned anything from those guys and maybe keeps that wacky kind of offense they run, and then also some of the things that probably Jerry Kill's taught him. But I have number 10 as Clark Lee right here. I think he could probably rise a little bit more, but I'm going to be honest. I think Vanderbilt's going to be a lot worse next year than they were last year. I think that offense caught a lot of people by surprise. I think Diego Pavia caught a lot of people by surprise. I just don't see that happening this year. So I have Clark Lee at number 10.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I think it very much feels like Joey McGuire's first year in Lubbock, where they're very aggressive. They win a lot of coin flips. They win a lot of 4th downs. They get a lot of, and again, a lot of that, I say luck, but part of that's Diego Pavia making your luck, right? But that, I feel like that's what it is, where those coin flips, those 50-50s, they're going to come down the other way eventually. And I'm with you there. And I've got Clark Lee 1 spot higher. So I think we're pretty much in accord there, right? I've got Clark Lee next up on the list. And again, having a quarterback like Diego Pavia makes you look a lot smarter than you are or can be and have been. And that's no shots at Clark Lee. Again, I think he has the potential to be a great coach. But I think part of it is also what Vanderbilt is. Vanderbilt is always going to be at a disadvantage as far as academics. Getting guys into the school is just tough, right? It is what it is. It's kind of like the Service Academy problem or the Georgia Tech problem. So it's just something that they have to compensate for and be aware of and compensate for. I would love to see them go eventually in that Kansas Jayhawks triple option situation, where it's kind of a spread triple option, because it allows you to do some more of that, get creative, keep people on their toes.
Yeah, I have number 9 is Mike Elko. I think he did basically like what you said. He did what Jimbo Fisher did, but Jimbo Fisher did that every year for 6 years basically.
Mhm.
So I think Mike Elko in his first year, I thought that he did a pretty good job, and the defense I thought was really good, and that's his calling card. If he can just get the offense, average and keep the defense keep going up every year, I think they can be a really good football team. So I have him at number 9. Number 8 for me is Shane Beamer. I think he's a really good motivator. I think he's a good recruiter. I don't know how good he is X's and O's, but this team easily could have been, they probably should have been 10-2 and in the college football playoff. Like that game versus LSU, they were hosed on that game. And they should, if Lenora Sellers doesn't get hurt, they'll probably win that game anyways. So I have Shane Beamer 8. I think he could definitely climb as high again as 4 or number 3 by the end of next year. If they go in, they achieve what I think they can achieve with the defensive talent coming back and Lenora Sellers coming back, who I think is a top 5 quarterback in the SEC and probably a top 10 quarterback in the country. I think you could rank him, like I said, as high as 3 or 4. And I think you could also say if they go 4-8 and he does what he's been doing before last season, honestly, and underachieving, he could be his like 14th or 15th. So I have him at number 8.
Yeah, and I'm close with you on that. And I think I got my numbers off. I think I may have done one extra while you were out because I'm on number 7 somehow. But Beamer is my number 7, right? We're pretty much in one accord there, right? I think Lenora, again, much like we talked about with Billy Napier, I think what Shane Beamer looks like and is coming out of this year, it rises and falls with his quarterback, right? And one of the most dynamic quarterbacks, like being able to grab that guy, what his development looks like in the offseason, what he's able to grow into, because at this point, I guess this point being like 2 months ago, he was very much a one read and run quarterback in a lot of ways, which works as a freshman and especially keeps people off on their toes, right? Johnny Manziel basically won a Heisman doing that. So it is effective in the right lanes and avenues, but I'm curious to see what the development looks like, how they continue to build around it. I like a team that's a spread running team, so being able to run zone read, being able to run the quick options and the read options, something I appreciate and I enjoy. So I want to see more of that in their offense. Roll in some RPOs, roll in some quick slants with that, and I really think that offense could be lethal. So I could see him rising up the rankings as we get into this time next year.
Number 7, I have Eli Drinkowitz. I think they overachieved 2 years ago, and I think they underachieved last year. So I think it kind of evens out. I think he's done a really good job at Missouri. Like, that's not an easy place to win football games. That's not a place that really has won football games other than the Chase Daniel era. So I think he's done a solid job. I don't think they're ever going to be a college football national championship team. Do I think once every 5 years, 6 years, you can get to a college football playoff? Yeah, I do. I think they can be that team. I think there's actually a couple teams like that in the SEC. I think South Carolina, Missouri, and Arkansas are those 3 teams for me. I think if they hit their peak every 5 to 6 years, you can sneak into the college football playoff. I don't think you're ever going to win a national championship. So if those are your expectations, I disagree with them. But if you told me, in a decade you got to the college football playoff twice, I can believe that from those 3 programs. I think that's definitely possible with the way they recruit, where they're at, and everything like that.
I would add Auburn to that list. I think historically, that's probably another team that I'd like to see that I think could be in that spot.
Number 6 for me, this is where we kick off. Brian Kelly. He has to fall. After last year, I think they blew a couple games. I think the Ole Miss game where they came back and won, they got very lucky in that football game as well. Listen, back-to-back years, you had Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas, and you couldn't get to the college football playoff. That, to me, is a failure. Then you have Kyron Lacey, Garrett Nussmeier, that offensive line with a defense that had gotten better, and you still can't get to the college football playoff. I disagree, or I think that's wrong. I don't understand how you don't get to the college football playoff, not even but back-to-back years. Could you have gotten there 1 year? 1 year with that amount of talent you had offensively, just kind of figured it out defensively, and he wasn't able to do that, honestly. So I'm very disappointed. I think this is the make or break year to me. If they don't make the college football playoff this year, I think they should fire Brian Kelly. Listen, it's impossible not to win at LSU. It really is. I saw Ed Orgeron win a national championship at LSU. Ed Orgeron, and he is not a good football coach. I saw Les Miles win a national championship and get to a national championship at LSU. He is not a good football coach. So for Brian Kelly not to be able to do either one of those things to me is a disaster. It's a failure. He deserves to be fired if he cannot do it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I have him at 6 as well. I think Brian Kelly, you can't be that unlikable and also be the first coach to not win a national championship of the like. I have it right. Like the last 3 or 4 coaches there have at least won one national championship, right?
Yeah.
Brian Kelly is on the verge of breaking that streak. And it's wild to me. And I think the comparison of him leaving Notre Dame to go to LSU and then Notre Dame 2 years later getting to the national championship game, like that to me is proof positive that I think Brian Kelly is not going to get it done at LSU. It feels like he may be a limiting factor rather than somebody who's going to get the job done for them.
Yeah, it's funny because everyone thought the limiting factor was Notre Dame and they could only win 10 games because of academic standards, that and so forth. And I thought that. I really believe that. Then this year disproved that. And if Marcus Freeman's able to win 10 or 11 games next year, it's going to disprove it even more. Like you said, the limiting factor may have just been the guy on the sidelines. It may have been Brian Kelly. And I think next year's going to tell us a lot. If Notre Dame's able to win 10 or 11 games, they don't have to get back to a national championship. But if they do that, and then Brian Kelly only wins 9 or 10 games, doesn't get to the college football playoff, it's pretty clear it was Brian Kelly. And honestly, at that point, I could see him retiring because he's going to get fired. He's going to get a big buyout. And I don't really see anyone hiring him or a job that he would really want.
Yeah. Take the buyout and then retire.
Who's your number 5?
I've got Kalen DeBoer at number 5. I think it's too early to call. And I think as much as I love Jalen Milroe, DeBoer's style and Jalen Milroe just don't really go together in a substantive way. Alabama's going to be Alabama. The recruiting is still pretty solid. I think Alabama fans, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, Nick Saban has broken all of our brains as it comes to what fair expectations are for a college football program. It's not going to happen again, ever. It didn't happen before, really, in the modern era, and it won't happen again. So I think Kalen DeBoer, I think unfairly it's hard to be the guy after the guy, right? And Nick Saban is the GOAT, right? He is the absolute greatest of all time at this level. And so having Kalen DeBoer have to step in and have a year in which they missed the college football playoff feels disastrous, but they were a couple of breaks away. I think the biggest black eye for me is that OU game. Like that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't have happened. If they win that game, they're in the playoffs. Like, but again, I don't think they're very far off. I think DeBoer getting a quarterback that fits what he wants to do a little bit more schematically will be a benefit for them. Alabama's still Alabama. They're still going to recruit. They still got a lot of the infrastructure there. Again, I think part of the issue is also when and how Saban left. I've said it, I've alluded to it a couple of times, but like Nick Saban did not leave them in a good and advantageous spot to grab a coach, to grab portal players, to grab portal quarterbacks, to grab pieces that they needed. So he was a bit behind the 8 ball coming in. So I'm willing to give him some benefit of the doubt this year. Now, if we see them lose dumb games again this next year, he's going to slide down the list.
Yeah, so I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because of what I've seen. So I don't have him ranked that low. I do have him one spot higher. So when we get to 4, I'll talk about him a little bit. But number 5, I have Josh Heupel. I think Josh Heupel's done a really good job at Tennessee. I don't think he's overachieved. I think he's done honestly exactly what I expect from Tennessee. Get into a college football playoff now. Maybe next year, the year after, get to a college football playoff and advance to like a Final Four. I don't see Tennessee is a team that wins national championships quite often. That's just not their history. So, maybe get a national championship in like a 15-year tenure at Tennessee, and that's a really good job. So I think he's done a good, solid job at Tennessee, and he's done a much better job than anyone since Philip Fulmer, I believe, was the head coach at Tennessee. So I think he's done a good job. So I have him at number 5. And like I said, number 4 for me is Kalen DeBoer. He's just done way too much winning at every level for me not to have him in the top 4. And honestly, if he would have won one more game, I'd probably still have him in the top 2. I think he was either my second or third best coach in the SEC last year because the guy wins no matter where he's at. He won at Fresno State. He won at Washington. He won at Division II, Division III before that. I think he's a really good football coach, and he finally is going to have whatever quarterback he desires in the next couple of years. That's how I'm going to judge him, and he did a fantastic job with his type of quarterback and Michael Penix. I expect that. I don't know if I expect that with Ty Simpson because that's who I think is going to be the quarterback next year. Let's see how he does with Keelan Russell. If Keelan Russell hits and does really well, then I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, especially since he kind of jumped on him semi-early. Like, he still wasn't really getting recruited very heavily. It was really just SMU, and then Alabama came in out of nowhere. And then about a month or two later, you saw other schools take notice and then give him offers. So we'll see how Kalen DeBoer does. Who is their number 4 for you?
I had Josh Heupel. So you and I just kind of flip-flopped those. I think Josh Heupel is one of the better offensive minds in the country. I think the way that he runs offense, the way that he runs that team, I think there are pretty obvious gaps in how they run and what they want to do. But when he's got the right pieces, there's nobody, I think, more deadly, or maybe one or two people at best more deadly than him, calling and scheming up an offense when he's got the right quarterback, when he's got the right tools at his disposal. I think they are. It honestly feels like the Diet Coke version of Lincoln Riley OU, where like if they could put together a defense that does what they need them to do and lets the offense not have to score 11 billion points to win, I feel like they're doing a great job. So like that is something to keep an eye on. And again, I think they've got a lot of pieces on the defense. They had a lot of talent this year, but it just felt like they didn't do as much with that talent as I hoped.
Yeah, I also think Nico just has to get better at not one read. It was always one read from him, and then if it wasn't there, he struggled. So if he gets past that, I think he can be fine. And I think that is also an indictment on Josh Heupel going forward. Like, if he doesn't get better, you recruited him, you're the offensive guru. How is he doing?
Freshman quarterbacks will get better, hopefully, with Josh Heupel, because that's what he does.
Yeah. Number 3, I have Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin is the third best coach in the SEC. It's funny because I don't think he's a national championship winning head coach. I've said this multiple times on this channel. I've said this multiple times when I was doing the SEC show. I think he's a good football coach, and I think he's going to win you 10 to 11 games, and I think you can get to a college football playoff. I just don't think he provides the consistency in a week in and week out basis that leads to national championships. And I'm talking on the field and off the field. You see that with his behavior off the field. It's fine if you like it. It's fine if you don't. But I just name me a coach that has won a national championship that does that. In any sport. Really, there's only one I can think of, and he's coaching college basketball at UConn. Dan Hurley is the only one I can think of that kind of acts like a perpetuant child all the time and wins a national championship. I don't know any NFL coach that won a Super Bowl doing that. I don't know any college football coach that won a national championship doing that. I don't know a Major League Baseball manager that did that. So the only one is Dan Hurley. He's an outlier because he's a fantastic X's and O's guys. Is Lane Kiffin such a savant X and O's wise that he can overcome that? Possibly. I don't think he is because I don't even know if he's better than Steve Sarkisian. So he's my number 3.
If I had consistent grading on this, I'd probably have Lane Kiffin lower because I could fault Lane Kiffin for some of the things that I put down other guys for. Like they had a really talented roster this year. They had a very expensive roster this year and didn't do much with it. But I think from what they expected Ole Miss, and I think what they can do at Ole Miss, I think Lane Kiffin has done a good job of getting most of the toothpaste out of the tube, and that's kind of how I'm judging it. They could have been a lot better this year. They probably should have been a lot better this year, again, with some of the talent they brought in, and I think that is always going to be, at least at this point, what we've seen from Lane Kiffin. The story of Lane Kiffin is like they were good, but they should have been great, right? They were good, but they should have been great. And that's what we've seen from him. And again, I like Lane Kiffin. I think he is a very smart coach. I think he's very he's trying to build a brand, and I think in a way that could be savvy. It doesn't play as well when you're not winning, or at least competing for conference championships. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, the comment of, man, I don't know if I want to play in the SEC championship game, and then losing to Florida in the same week is so on brand for him. I mean, and it's kind of funny. It's like the Tom Herman thing. Like Tom Herman did some stuff like, again, but when he did this to Drew Lock, guys like that don't win national championships. We should have all known at that point. It's like, yeah, I don't think that guy's going to win because I've never seen someone act like a fool on the sidelines and win, because it doesn't happen. Like I've seen guys yell at players. I'm not saying that. I'm saying acting like a 18-year-old yourself, because you're not an 18-year-old. You're supposed to be leading 18-year-olds, not acting like 18-year-olds.
You're a 48-year-old. Act like
that. Yeah. Number 2, this is where I have Sark. I don't think you can debate Sark at number 1. I don't think that there's a case for that because that's Kirby Smart. Whoop-de-doo. Who's surprised by that one? But I think you could probably drop, like if someone told me Sark was the fourth best coach in the conference, fine, I can get behind that. If he's the second, I can get behind that. Anything lower than 4 to me, I just can't agree with. Like, I think you can make an argument for a Kalen DeBoer. I think you can make an argument for a Josh Heupel, but I think that's where it ends in a Lane Kiffin maybe. So maybe 5, but even Lane Kiffin hasn't done enough to me. I mean, the guy's got back-to-back college football playoff appearances plus back-to-back Final Fours. He's the only one that's done that under the new system. So he's done a fantastic job. So he's my number 2.
Yeah, I've got him there as well. And I think, the argument against Sark, I think, is like we want to see him do it again in the SEC, right? He did one in the Big 12, one in the SEC. So that's the argument of putting Sark lower on the list. But I think based upon on-field results, based upon trajectory of the program, I think where the arrow is pointed, I don't think you can put Sark any lower than that. It just Texas again is moving in the right direction. They've got the quarterback of the future. They have the quarterback of the present and the quarterback of the future. And now they've got the quarterback of the future and then the future's future in there.
Yeah.
The staff turnover has been minimal. They're maximizing, I think, in a lot of ways what they have on the roster. They're at the point where they built the roster to the point where they can be very selective with what they do in the transfer portal. And we've seen that as well. So I just think based upon all of the boxes that are checked, it feels like Sark has one big monkey on his back, and that's the guy that we both have at number one.
Yeah, he can't get over him. And hey, guess what? Not many people can get over him up until this point. The only one that could kind of consistently was his the guy that taught him at everything, his mentor, Nick Saban. So number one for me is Kirby Smart. I don't think you can debate that. If they do have a fall off, like some people are predicting, like let's say they go 9-3, and Sark does again what he did last year, even if let's say they don't make the national championship, they just go back to the Final Four, and this time let's say they win the SEC, I think then the conversation can be had for number one. But for right now, it's a guy with 2 national championships, multiple SEC titles. They had a down year this year and still won the SEC, so I have to have him at number one.
Until somebody else is raising that conference championship trophy, that's all that needs to be said, right? He has gotten everybody's number, and the playoff run wasn't what we thought it could be and should be with that level of talent. But again, until somebody else is raising up that SEC championship trophy, there's nobody else you can put at number one.
100%. And that wraps it up, guys. Sark at number 2 for both of us, ranking every SEC coach. So again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe as it says down below. We are 12 away from 3K, so we really appreciate that. Also, join us every Monday at 8 p.m. live to break down whatever the hottest topics are, so we appreciate that as well. Amazon link is in the description. Check it out. Does not change the buying process or experience. And then also check out the Ole Miss show. We dropped the link down in the comments, so just go over there, subscribe. Does not take very much time at all, maybe 3 seconds, that's it. So please do that, and we will get to our next topic, which is Georgia. We just talked about Kirby Smart trying to flip Dia from Texas. So Georgia actually offered Dia on January 17th. Mike Bobo made an in-person in-house visit to Dia and Raja Bell, obviously NBA player, that's his son, and Mike Bobo skipped his own son's football banquet to go make this visit and offer. So I think that tells you a little bit of what they believe for Dia and what they're trying to get from Dia. Dia is the number 14th player nationally, number 4 quarterback, according to 247 composite. Gerald, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's always scary, right? It is what it is. Like when Georgia is coming for your quarterback, when a team like Georgia, or like back when it was with Nick Saban in Alabama, right? You just kind of, grab the edge of your seat and try to hold on for dear life. But what I always say when these things come up is like, if you're going to want to swim with the big fish, then you've got to be in for a fight, right? If you want to run with big dogs, you got to be in for a dog fight. And that's what this is going to be, right? If Texas is going to be recruiting at this elite level, they're going to be recruiting the top players in the country. You're going to have to sweat out some of these recruitments. You're going to have to deal with Kirby Smart coming to offer, or Kalen DeBoer at Alabama coming to offer, or Oregon coming to offer, and Uncle Phil trying to drop a check. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Like those are the things that you have to be cognizant of and be okay with, right? If this is something that you cannot deal with as a Texas fan, stop following recruiting. Like that's all I could say. Like it just is what it is. That's what it's going to be moving forward. If Texas is going to be nationally relevant and dropping these classes that can compete for national championships, then we're going to be in this position year in and year out.
No, and this is time to say, don't freak out when we're ranked 30th in June. I don't care about June. I said this last year. I released a video. Everyone was freaking out because I think we were like 31st or something in June or July. And even Sark was asked the question, and he said, it's June. I don't care about recruiting in June. And when that was going on, I said, listen, calm down. We're still going to land like a top 5 to 7 class. So I wasn't even as optimistic as what it turned out to be. We ended up with the number 1 class in the country. So calm down. I think we only have 3 commits right now for this class. So we'll be fine. even if he does flip, but he's a really good player. He ended, remember guys, he did end his junior year with an injury, so that's something to keep an eye out on. It seemed like it could have been a catastrophic injury, so he avoided that, so that's a really good thing. And also, you got to remember, his dad was a professional athlete, and they handle things a certain way. And I think you're not, to me, I think those guys are going to stay more locked in. You saw that with Arch Manning. As soon as he committed, he was more locked in. You saw that with Santana Wilson. As soon as he was committed, more locked in. Diabella is still currently committed to Texas, and he is also currently recruiting for Texas. If you go to his Twitter page, he's out there saying, hey, come to Texas, hook him, come to Texas, hook him. He's doing that with all these recruits. So I don't think there's anything to be worried about right now. Like you said, is Georgia going to bring it on? Is LSU is another name to watch going to bring it on? Is Miami, especially with the money they have, going to bring it on? But guess what I don't care about as much in this recruitment? It's not going to be as much NIL, guys. This guy's dad played in the NBA. He's got a lot of money. He doesn't come from a background of where, hey, I need to go to the best place with the biggest offer. No, he wants to go to the best place with the best development, period. And I think the pitch right now, like the only team that scares me in that, if that's the pitch, is LSU. Because if Nussmeier has a fantastic year and is drafted as like a top 5 pick, Jane Daniels, Nussmeier, back-to-back is a really strong look for LSU. Georgia doesn't have anything like that. Miami doesn't have anything like that unless Cam Ward goes number 1. But then you could say, hey, he was a transfer, and before that, they had nobody. So really, LSU is the only one, in my opinion, that scares me. I don't think he goes to Georgia. I think it's definitely scary because of who Georgia is and the way they recruit. But honestly, if I'm looking at it, I think LSU is the bigger competition here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that like Texas could also make that same argument. If Quinn Ewers gets drafted decently and Arch Manning has a good year, that's a SARK feather in his cap. So again, it's big and scary when Georgia comes for you. It's absolutely terrifying. I think the in-state schools are the ones to watch. I think LSU is the one to watch. But again, like I said before, this is what recruiting with the big dogs is. This is what getting number 1 classes looks like. This is the stuff that you have to sweat out if you're going to follow recruiting at this high level. It's something to just keep in your back pocket. And I think Texas has options. I think Texas, the quarterback room, it would suck to not have Diabella in there, but I think Texas and SARK will be in a fine position. They may have to go into the portal and get a year or 2 rental if that's how it works out. But again, there's also you got Bo Beck, I think his name, or Bo Bentley from Salina right down the road. So like you could probably try to get in on him. He's a top 250 guy. So like there's some options there as well if the Diabella thing does go sideways. I don't think it's going to, but if it does, I think there's some options.
No, I don't think it's going to either. And my thing is this: he came to Texas Junior Day when he could have come to go on to other places because he's already been to Texas multiple times. He chose to go to Texas and then also helped recruit that weekend at Texas. So until stuff like that stops happening, he's going to be at Texas. And until he visits Athens, he has yet to do that. I'm not really worried about it. But if you were to flip, I have 3 names written down. I want to know a couple names. You just named one there in Bo Bentley. Number 1 for me there would be Jared Curtis. He's like the number 2 national player according to 247 composite, number 1 quarterback. We have offered him. He's from Tennessee, 6'4", 225, big, strong pocket passing guy, fits the mold of what Steve Sarkisian wants. So he would be the number 1 guy for me to look out for. Right now, it's funny. Georgia is the most talked about place for him. So that's another thing too. If he goes to Georgia, Diabella's not going to go to Georgia if Jared Curtis goes to Georgia. I'm going to let people know that right now.
And it may be, and you see this sometimes in recruiting, it may be a squeeze tactic to get their quarterback on the board because at this point, not having your 2026 quarterback lined up is not a great thing. You want to have your quarterback as the first couple off the board. And so Georgia not having a quarterback on the board, you see it where teams will bring a couple of quarterbacks in for a visit, hoping to squeeze one of them into a commit, or they'll start to put pressure on another quarterback. I think part of it is because Georgia needs Jared Curtis to kind of go or get off the pot, for lack of a better term. They need somebody to jump in the boat and get that class going. And obviously, Georgia's going to recruit fine, but you need a quarterback, you need a bell cow, you need a signal caller in the class. So I wonder if there's some of that at play as well.
Leo, I have not seen you in the chat, so we appreciate you being here. Please like and subscribe. Also, what you said gave me a little bit of chuckle, honestly, because Kirby would let Bell warm the bench for a few years because he's a 5-star QB. Yeah, he does tend to do that. He's weird with quarterbacks where you saw that with Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, and then Justin Fields. He chose Jake Fromm, who was by far the least talented of the 3. Justin Fields transfers, and then Jacob Eason transfers. And all of them go to the NFL, and Jake Fromm has by far the worst career of all three of them in the NFL, and he wasn't very good at Georgia's last couple of years. So that it was pretty funny how the way he does handle his quarterbacks. And then he went with Stetson Bennett over JT Daniels, which did work out, but it was definitely questioned at the time.
Yeah, I mean, the JT Daniels thing, I think, proves him right in retrospect, but still a weird decision.
Yeah. Number 2 for me, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. It's Jake, I believe, Fetty. He's a top 10 quarterback in the country. Right now, he's the number 9 quarterback. He's from Texas. He's from El Paso. This is the only thing that worries me. He's not really a SARK body type guy-wise. 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's committed to Arizona State currently, so he's a little bit more mobile of a guy. Not super big, not super strong, but he's accurate. And I think he can be a decent quarterback. We'll see. And especially, hey, he's young still. He can still grow an inch or two. So we'll see how that comes along. And if Diabell decommits and goes somewhere else, I think that's a name to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. And I think that's fair. Another one that, like, this is a weird one, but Adrian Peterson's kid is a 2026 quarterback. He's a more of a mobile quarterback. But he's another one in state that doesn't have a ton of offers. He may be a guy that you bring in to build the room while you kind of shore things up. But that's just another name that's on the 2026 list. I was like, I don't know, maybe throw that out there and see what happens.
I saw him on there. I did not know that it was Adrian Peterson's son. That's pretty funny. I know he's like the 17th ranked quarterback on 247. Yeah, he's more of a mobile guy, but he is long and lengthy. So he could definitely put on some weight too.
He's got a frame that could build to what SARK likes. And even as a runner, he's put up, I think, like 5,000 or 6,000 yards in 2 seasons. Like he's not a bad passer. Like 6,000 passing yards in a couple seasons is pretty solid.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I almost wrote him down. The other one for me is Troy Hoon. This is a guy actually we were actually deciding who do we want more, Diabell or Troy Hoon. We went with Diabell, and Troy Hoon then went to Penn State. But you could jump back on that train. This is a guy that did want to go to Texas, but we chose to pursue Diabell more. So it's always weird about that because this guy, listen, all these guys have egos to some point, and maybe he's just like, you know what, you pass over me. Why would I want to come there? So I could see that happening, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just doesn't care and he really likes Texas. But I think you could see them jump back on that train if Diabell does go somewhere else.
Yeah, and there is, again, we are in February of 2026, like 2025. We have 10 months until these guys are going to commit. And again, like you said earlier, and like Sark has said multiple times, like sweating recruiting in February is like a rocking chair, right? It's going to give you something to do, but you're not going anywhere. Like, just chill. Like it's going to play itself out. I have not been disappointed with the recruiting class under Steve Sarkisian. Texas is going to be fine.
Yeah, I agree. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build. And join us every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, rain or shine, snow or sleet, in the off season, does not matter. In season, does not matter. We will be here, so we really appreciate you guys. Let's talk about this, because this was new, surprising, but definitely a good thing because this guy is a beast. 6'6", 285 pounds with an 80-inch wingspan. KODI GREENE, committed to Oregon currently, and you talk about battling with Phil Knight for that those prospects with all that Nike money. Well, we're going to battle with Phil Knight again. They have beaten us more in these battles, though, than we've beaten them, so it's time to hit on a couple of them. What do you think about KODI GREENE?
Yeah, I mean, KODI GREENE is a guy who fits the Kyle Flood mold. He fits what Kyle Flood wants. He can put on some good weight, massive arm, like wingspan. Guy can hold it down at left tackle, I think, very, very specifically. But I think, Oregon has the pocket aces of Phil Knight, right? It is what it is. If it's going to come down to an NIL battle, Phil Knight wants to win a national championship before he dies. Like, it's just kind of been put out there in multiple ways. So, like, he's going to do what he needs to do to get it done. Now, if it's not an NIL battle at this point, like, part of how, Oregon won some of those was that there was a different head coach that specializes in offensive linemen that was there, that Texas kind of benefited in him leaving and Texas grabbing Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams. So I think, again, Kyle Flood has a track record of developing NFL talent, especially at the offensive line, right? So, like, there's an opportunity to sell that, right? Because you're going to have a top 5 maybe pick in Kelvin Banks. You're going to have guys that probably wouldn't have gone pro in anything related to football, going and being drafted, or at least having a cup of coffee in an NFL camp this year. So there's a lot to sell there. And so like, that's going to be the thing, because a guy like KODI GREENE is going to get paid regardless of where he goes. Like, I think Texas can make it right in a lot of ways. So really, like, if it's an NIL thing, again, it's going to be hard to outbid Phil, but I think if you can layer the recruitment, the development, the opportunity, the networking, all of those things that come with being a Texas football player on top of what Texas can do to make your pockets right, I think there's probably an opportunity for Texas to make some noise here.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because, again, with the development aspect, they're going to have a battle in this first round coming up, guys, of who's the first tackle off the board. It's either going to be Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell, Josh Simmons from Ohio State, or Josh Connerly from Oregon. Those are the 4 guys in contention for that spot, right? I mean, if you go anywhere, they're all ranked differently, so I don't know who that's going to be, but that's something, feather in the cap, whoever does that in this recruitment, they can point to, hey, our guy got drafted ahead of their guy type of thing. But then also Texas, even if they don't win that, can say, hey, we had 2 guys drafted in the top 40, because Cam Williams is going to be a top 40 pick. If he performs really well at the combine, I think you could even see him sneak up into the first round because of the measurables that he has. And then where did all the other offensive linemen for Texas get drafted too? Like, where does Jake Majors get drafted? Does Hayden Connor get drafted? I think that will help out as well. And then how does Trevor Gooseby come along? Does he go in the NFL draft after 1 year? That would really help this situation as well. But this guy's a really good football player. Like, if we're ranking based off who we're interested in as of this moment, I know we both like Felix Ojo. I think this guy's a better prospect than Felix Ojo, just because of all the measurables. Like, he's a freak. 6'6", 285 with 80-inch wingspan. You can easily put another 30 to 35 pounds on that frame. He's also a very good athlete. If you watch the tape, he moves very well. He's also super physical. It's really hard to find guys that are physical and move very well. Those are like the elite of the elite type guys, Kelvin Banks being one of them. He has to get a little bit more athletic in space, but not much. He's, like I said, pretty good. I think he's going to be a right tackle or guard. I don't see him as a left tackle. I don't think he's that good of an athlete. Like I said, good athlete, not great. So I really want this guy. I hope we can get him. We're not coming on. I don't think you can say coming on late because it's only February. I think coming on late would have been like late spring. So we're coming in my opinion, right at the right time. And and a thing too, I just forgot, he's going to Mater Dei senior year. So it's going to be interesting how he does versus that competition. I think he wants to show that. And honestly, if he does really well, like he did versus past competition, he's a 4-star right now. He will be a 5-star based off what he looks like, based off how he plays. If he plays that well versus Mater Dei competition, we know what kind of competition they play in California and across the country, being one of the top 10 like high school teams in the country, then this guy's a 5-star recruit. And Texas could be going for like a 2022 type class. You get him, you get John Turntine, you get a Felix Ojo. We're talking about one of the best high school recruiting classes of all time at the offensive line position.
And Max Wright's already in the boat, right? Max Wright is a long development curve guy, but I think Max Wright is I can't think of a good metaphor for him, but he's the kind of guy where you watch him develop, like, oh, that's Max Wright. Like, where did he come from? So I'm excited for that one as well. Can't leave him off the list.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because him and Trevor Gooseby are pretty similar. Max Wright is like 6'8", Trevor Gooseby 6'7", and they're both long, lengthy, athletic guys. Max Wright also played basketball. I think Trevor Gooseby played basketball as well. His brother, who could come to Texas as a basketball player, obviously plays basketball. And he needs to put a little bit of weight on. If he puts on 25, 30 pounds and develops right, I think he'd be a really good player. They didn't even have him ranked when he came to Texas Junior Day, and I looked at everything and I said, this guy should be ranked. He'll probably be a 4-star by the time everything's done. And I think he's a really good player. And Texas was in on him early. They came hard and they got him. And I think he's going to be a fantastic football player for Texas. And I'm hoping KODI GREENE can come in and do the same thing.
I'm with you on that.
So again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really, really helps out the channel. Again, we are 12 subs away from 3,000. It'd be really awesome to hit that by, I don't know, let's say the beginning of March. Let's have fun. Can we get 12 subs in 2 weeks? Let's hope we can. Again, guys, please do that. Also, check out the YouTube channel Mark Rogers at the Voice of College Football Old Miss channel. It really helps out what they're trying to build. The link is in the comments. All you have to do is click it, go over there, subscribe. Does not cost anything. It really helps out the channel. Once they get to 1,000 subs, if you want to unsubscribe, stop watching, whatever, do that. But just get them up to 1,000 subs. It helps monetize the channel. We really appreciate that, guys. Also, check us out on any audio platform. We are on any audio platform, whether that be Amazon, Apple, Spotify. So please check us out there at the Voice of College Football. We really appreciate it. Let's talk about this. So Paul Feinbaum obviously comes in, says Texas opens on rocky footing versus Ohio State. Paul Feinbaum says a lot of stuff has to fill time during the offseason. I understand that. Let's see. I have the exact quote. Talking about Steve Sarkisian, he's gotten some key elements in the portal. He has what I think is one of the safest bets in America on the starting quarterback job. I'm not concerned about that. I think it'll be a little rocky. I think it's going to be tough going up to Ohio State in that first game. Gerald, what are your early feelings on that Ohio State game, and do you agree with Paul Feinbaum?
I mean, do I think it's going to be rocky? Probably, right? That's a tough way to open up your season. But I think if you're looking at what both teams lose and what both teams get back, I feel like there are more sure things at Texas than there are at Ohio State, right? That's how my feeling is. Now, I'm not saying Ohio State doesn't have a ton of talent. I'm not saying that they're not going to have all of the bells and whistles and the 5 stars. And I think they're probably, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I bet their blue chip ratio is top 2 next year. Probably like they're going to be one of the, if not the most talented roster in the country next year. So like, put that out there in Front Street. But I think when you're looking at things you can count on and sure things for next year, Texas probably going to have the better set of edge rushers. Texas probably going to have the better set of linebackers, I think, in that room. Texas quarterback is going to be a toss-up. Like, they're both going to be in their first start. Ohio State's going to be breaking in new running backs. Texas is going to have some experienced running backs. Ohio State, big advantage for them, those wide receivers. They're going to have the best offensive player in the country, period, end of sentence, right? There's no two ways around that. So like Texas secondary is going to have to do something similar to what they did in the college football playoff game against them. Again, we are 7 months out from this, but I think where I'm at right now, I feel like Texas has more sure things on both sides of the ball than Ohio State. So is it going to be tough? Is it going to be loud? Is it going to be nasty? Absolutely. But I don't think Texas is going to lose that game.
No, I don't either. I've actually already bet on it. It's like one of 10 games you can bet on. Texas is getting, on my bet, 3.5 points. It's already down to 3. Not even talking about players, like coaching-wise. Offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, gone. Who's that going to be? Defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, gone. Running backs coach, I believe, just left, and I think they need one. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Offensive line coach, I know, gone. He joined the Arizona Cardinals. I know they complained about him, but that offensive line played very well down the stretch with a lot of injuries, so I don't really know what they're complaining about. I think he did a really good job. And then you lose most of that defense. Like, let's be honest here. They won the national championship because their defense was the best in the country. I think Texas had the second best defense in the country. I think Ohio State had the best. And they only bring back Davison Igbinosun, which, if anyone knows anything about that guy, holding machine, had the most penalties by any player, not defensive player, any player in the country. I think Cam Williams was in that running as well. But Davison Igbinosun was in I think he had 16 penalties at the end of the year. So he's getting a penalty a game. And most of them came in the Oregon game, and he had a couple in the Texas game as well. Then you have Jermaine Matthews. Nothing bad to say. He played really well. You actually saw a big difference from Ohio State's defense when he got more playing time compared to Denzel Burke. I think he's a really good player. You bring back Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, best duo in college football wide receiver-wise. That's what they have. But then on defense, other than Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews, Sonny Style, Caleb Downs. That's it. You don't have any of the edge rushers you had. You don't have any of the interior players you have. You're missing your linebackers, John Simon, alongside Sonny Styles. And I don't know who your safety is going to be alongside Caleb Downs, because Lathan Ransom played lights out last year. So you don't have a returning guy there, and you're only returning 2 offensive linemen. So I do disagree with Paul Feinbaum. I think we're going to win this game. I really do. And I think the only way we don't win this game is if our offensive line is a complete mess. That's literally the only position I'm like, you know what, if that's a complete mess, I could see issues being there, because they still have a lot of talent, like you said, on that Ohio State roster. I just don't think it's going to be a complete mess, because guess what? Other than the first year under Steve Sarkisian, the offensive line's been good. It hasn't been great his second year, but it was good. I thought it was great 2 years ago, and I thought it was somewhere between great and good last year. I don't think it was great last year, but I don't think it was good either. I think it was a little bit better than good. So I expect, honestly, a better production out of the offensive line next year because I think we're going to be able to run inside zone more. I don't think you're going to see as many penalties. And Arch Manning's going to help out with that with the mobility. And that's another thing too. Listen, Arch Manning's going to be making his first start, but on the road, but I've seen him play and I've seen him make starts and I've seen him perform at Texas A&M. I know it was in a running role. I've seen literally nothing from Julian Sand. Nothing. So I think that's a big advantage Texas will have. Him versus our defense, which is returning a lot of production. I think we're having 8 of 11 starters returning. Hey, listen, I'll take that all day versus a freshman quarterback in his first start, not his first home start, first road start, his first start in college football.
If there's one thing you don't want to see across from you as a quarterback, a redshirt freshman in your first start, is Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. Like, that's just something you want to, like, that is get in his head early, make him see ghosts, and Texas can really swing the pendulum in that one.
100%. So that's going to be very interesting. Like I said, I think the line is 3 now. I haven't checked in a couple weeks. It was 3.5. Now it was 3 on DraftKings. I don't know what it is now, but I do think Texas also closed the gap talent-wise. Like last year, like you said, blue chip ratio-wise, if you look at the teams, it was Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama all clustered in the top 3, and they were close. Then there was a drop-off to number 4, which was Texas. Then there was a drop-off to number 5, which was either Oregon or Clemson, but there was a drop-off in between there. I don't think that drop-off is going to exist anymore between Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama. I think those will be the top 4 talent-wise, and there'll be a lot. And Texas has made up a gap. I think Ohio State has come down slightly. I think Texas has jumped up slightly. Yeah. So that gap doesn't really exist any longer, and I think that matters as much as anything as well.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And again, blue chip, like stars matter. Blue chip ratio is a real thing. So again, something to watch, something to look out for. Ohio State had the highest one this year, and they won.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's usually how it works. Basically, if you're not in the top, like I think Bud Elliott has the blue chip ratio thing in the top. I think the lowest ever was Michigan at like 11 or 12. You don't win the national championship. You have to be basically a top 12 team talent-wise. If you don't compete in that, it's funny, we have a 12-team playoff. Then you don't win a national championship. But we really appreciate you guys joining us. This has been the 40th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. Thank you guys for joining us. Also, before you go, check out my Twitter right there, MatthewMS97 at Twitter, Voice of College Football host. Check me out there. And then Gerald as well, his Twitter, as well as his Blue Sky, is the same handle, and the Longhorn pod that he has with the college roommate. So please check that out. They do a really good job over there. So check out that podcast anywhere you can find your podcast. So please do that, guys. And as always, we will be here Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, every Monday night, breaking it down for you guys. And we really appreciate you guys being here. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.